As a faculty member of the University of Liverpool, England, I occasionally attended various conferences around the world, but I quickly realised that it wasn't worth me staying with other delegates at the posh downtown hotels in which the conferences were held. For one thing, I was no good at networking. I tended naturally to end up in conversation with the janitor or the cleaners and the catering staff, and besides, it saved money if I stayed in out-of-town motels. In 1997, there was a conference in Chicago. The internet was in its infancy, but I was able to get phone numbers of places to stay, and so, with the help of a AAA road map, I searched for motels not too far from downtown Chicago, and I telephoned them. My first call was to the Zanzibar Motel on East Pershing Road, Bronzeville, and when I asked the price of their cheapest room, the lady quoted me $16 for 4 hours. Now, I think I knew what she meant, but I insisted that I wanted to stay overnight, in fact, probably for a week. She seemed somewhat surprised, went off the phone, and then came back with a weekly rate of $250, though she said I couldn't actually book it there and then, but rather that I should simply turn up, which I did. So, when I arrived in Chicago in March 1997, I took the Green Line of the L as far as Indiana Station, the nearest to the Zanzibar, and I started to walk. Perhaps this more modern map shows the route a little clearer. I dragged my suitcase, the old-fashioned type with a single wheel in one corner and a handle opposite it, up Indiana Avenue, and then along East Pershing Road. I must confess that parts of East Pershing Road at that time in 1997 looked a bit like a bomb site. Many of the old buildings, which I assume had been quite close to the road, had been flattened, leaving just bricks and rubble, although some food outlets remained at road intersections. As far as I can recall, I met no one on the road, though I did hear one lone voice from across the street, which shouted at me, "Hey, Whitey, what you doing here?" I didn't turn to look, but kept dragging my wobbly one-wheel case behind me. Eventually I arrived at the Zanzibar, which is next to a Citgo gas station. This is now a BP station, and the Zanzibar, which later became the Eagle, has since been demolished. However, it's fair to say that currently in 2025, the area is really looking up, with some rather grand mixed-income apartments and impressive Marianos and other businesses cropping up here and there. In 1997, however, when I got to the Zanzibar reception, I was refused accommodation. The reason? I only had traveller's checks and no credit card, and the lady behind the thick glass screen said she couldn't process them. This meant a walk back to Indiana Station, the Green Line back to the Loop, and then the Orange Line out to Pulaski, to my second choice motel. The area around Pulaski seemed somewhat more modern at that time, the people more Hispanic, I think, and the accommodation was excellent at the Tangiers Motel, situated just past the high school on South Archer Avenue. Currently, in 2025, the Tangiers has been extensively upgraded to the Carlton Inn Midway. However, as the Tangiers in 1997, it was excellent for me, with easy daily access to the downtown conference via Pulaski Station and the Orange Line. In 2000, my conference was in New Orleans. I'd been at a conference there before in 1994, and like most visitors, had been impressed by the city. Along with other places, it claimed the title of the city that time forgot, and it was obviously struggling financially at that time. The great hope seemed to be in the anticipation that an influx of gambling casinos would somehow save it. As it was still a charming place. And for that 2000 conference, I decided to stay at the same motel as I had in 1994, Leati Motel on Tulane Avenue. No phone call needed this time. I'd been told about the place in 1994 by a guy called Jonah Lynn via the old text-only news group's internet software. My recollection from 1994 was that this motel, which straddled South Dupre Street, had been clean, cheap, about $25 a night, and very convenient for the city, meaning either a good walk down Tulane and Canal to the conference, or a bus ride or two via the stop at Walgreens on the corner of Elk Place and Tulane. The motel itself was demolished in 2018, and half of the plot is now used for public storage. But in 2000, my second time there, I went straight to the reception to book for the week. The lady on the desk, however, was somewhat negative, sort of implying that I'd be better off staying downtown. I insisted that I'd been there before, and she then insisted on giving me a room on the second floor directly opposite the reception, perhaps to keep an eye on me. All was well, until one night while I was reading there was an extremely loud thump on the wall behind my headboard, followed by raised voices and further banging about. Eventually, there was shouting coming from the landing outside my room. A girl was shouting, "I'm not going back in if you hit me," to which a guy replied, "You're a whore, for goodness sake. Get inside." And then, "Promise me you won't hit me again. Tell me you won't hit me." And so it continued. By this time I had positioned a chair underneath my door handle, something which I suppose I'd seen in the movies. Eventually, of course, the shouting stopped, and things went calm. I'll never know whether that young girl went back into the room, or whether she was able to do the right thing and get away. I often wondered too whether I did the right thing, or whether I should have opened my door to the landing and in some way, just maybe, helped to calm the situation down. I'll never know, and I'll have to live with that. But that experience gave me an inkling of the appalling abuse often connected with the oldest profession in the world, which is poles apart from what we often see in movies from Hollywood such as Pretty Woman and the like. That oldest profession, it would seem, was also practiced in what was possibly the oldest city in the world, Jericho. The story goes that well over 3,000 years ago, in preparation for an all-out assault on the city, Joshua sent in spies to check things out. Recent excavations suggest that parts of the city of Jericho had two walls separated by a very short distance, and into that space had been built poor, cheap housing, a shanty town, if you like, which was ripe for the passing trade of prostitution. One woman who lived in those walls and whom we're told was a prostitute decided for some reason to help Joshua's spies by hiding them from the city authorities. Her name was Rahab, and in trying to compare her lifestyle with some aspects of 21st century prostitution, one can only imagine how much worse it was in terms of sanitation, squalor, and the abuse she undoubtedly experienced, and the extent to which she was probably despised as a non-entity in her own society. It was this woman who for some reason decided to help the spies out, and it seems that she did this not so much out of fear from the invading army's reputation, scary though that was, but out of a genuine appreciation of the beliefs and faith of the people who were about to invade her city. Anyway, the story goes, she helped the spies out, they eventually escaped back to Joshua, the battle happened, and the rest is, well, history, or legend, depending on your beliefs. The amazing part of the story, however, is the fact that this prostitute Rahab, despite her appalling background, was not only saved from certain death, but was also accepted into the society of the people of Joshua. So much so that she eventually married one of those people, a man called Salmon, and they settled down together, had children, and one of those was called Boaz. He grew up, married a girl called Ruth, and Ruth in turn was the great-great-grandmother of King David of Israel. King David, of course, is said to be the ancestor of a man called Joseph, the husband of a woman called Mary, who was the mother of Jesus Christ. Can you think of a more unlikely ancestor for Jesus Christ than the prostitute Rahab? Through her determination to swap her allegiance, she became much more than a prostitute saved from certain death. She became the direct ancestor of Joseph, the husband of Mary, to whom Jesus was born. That abused and despised nonentity ended up playing a rather important role in the history of the world.